We are back in the Bike Ride studio with another review. And no, you're not having deja vu. I'm your host, Scott, and today we're taking a look at another folding e-bike. Now this time, it's from the brand Heybike with its Mars folding e-bike. It looks similar to other folders we've tested, but some big differences leap out right away. For example, it has an external battery rather than the typical hidden battery pack inside of the frame, as well as what looks to be a significantly more slack head tube angle than the typical vertical angle that we're looking at on these folders. How are these small changes going to impact riding and the usage of the bike? Well, let's hop into the saddle and ride some bikes to find out more. Before I roll the intro, if you're liking this content, please give me a like and subscribe so we can keep on bringing you even more videos. You guys are really keeping it up with the subscribers and with the comments, and I'm loving chatting with every one of you as you comment on the videos. So please leave me a comment and let me know how we're doing. Now let's get this started. So what is the Heybike Mars folding e-bike? Well, the Mars is a folding e-bike from Heybike, pretty obvious from the name, and it promises easier transport and storage than other e-bikes. Other than those obvious perks of space savings and easier transport, the Mars also packs a few comfort items, like an adjustable handlebar height and a suspension seat post, as well as its external battery pack that should allow for easier removal than the standard one hidden inside of the down tube we see on a lot of these folders. The battery pack also features a USB port, which allows you to use it as a large portable power bank for USB compatible devices. Folders occupy a large section of the e-bike market, and with so much competition, the Mars is really going to need to stand out to make an impression. So let's get started with the pro and con section to learn more about this bike from Heybike. And our first pro for this bike is that folding action as well as the adjustability that they've packed into it. It's pretty easy to see that one of the key attributes that make these folding bikes a good fit for some users is that folding action that they're capable of. And the Mars e-bike is an especially good example of this because it features a few additional items that make the folding style more comfortable for riding and to increase that folding ability and the space savings that it offers. So first, the bike features a smaller down tube because the battery is not contained inside of it. This allows the down tube to have a steeper angle and it increases the slackness of the head tube, making the ride a little bit more comfortable when you're turning and riding downhill. It's a slight difference from other folders, but it's definitely noticeable during use as it makes it a little bit easier to do a sharp corner without that feeling that you might wobble and fall over. The second feature is the adjustable handlebar, which allows you to adjust the height. This is a nice feature for people with taller torsos as it lets you dial in the fit just right. And it's something that I've commented on other folding e-bikes that didn't feature that kind of adjustment. Our second pro for the bike is the range it's capable of, along with the battery and motor output tapering. So the Mars impressed me with its total range of almost 30 miles, despite the fact that it did give me a little bit of range anxiety during the range test. The battery monitor, which can be adjusted in the advanced settings for how it displays this voltage, moves through the first 2 battery bars of the 5-bar meter faster than the remaining 3. By mile 12 of the range test, I'd already reduced the battery to 2 remaining bars, and this was not what I'd hoped for, so I started to head home. But the bike surprised me, pumping out another 18 miles before that battery was depleted. And 2 factors went into this. First, the factory settings for the battery voltage give a longer decline for the lower voltages, ensuring that you get an early warning that you're blowing through the battery. The second reason is that the controller begins to limit the allowed max wattage output of the battery and the motor at lower voltage levels. This was very obvious as we entered that last remaining battery bar on the meter. I could watch the watt meter first allow me a peak of around 750 watts with a full battery. Then as that battery voltage declined, I could only use 650, then 450 watts, and so on, until the bike was only being pushed with about 50 watts of power at the end of its battery life. Now, it managed to taper all the way down to no assistance. rather than the sudden shutoff that other bikes will do when they get to the lowest allowed voltage. This was a pleasant surprise for me. I liked the way that the bike worked hard to limp you back home, ensuring that you still had some assistance left over to help you get back. I actually ended up wondering when the bike would give up and die already on the range test. So Heybike gets good marks for controller programming and voltage level settings right from the factory. Despite the fact that it gave me a little bit of range anxiety when I blew through those first 2 battery bars quite quickly, I was pleasantly surprised and impressed that the 12.5 amp hour battery could pump out a range test of almost 30 miles, traveling at its max speed of 20 miles per hour. And our third pro for the bike is that rear rack as well as the battery placement. Now the Heybike Mars has a nice included rear rack. It's not as heavy duty as some racks I've seen, but it's more than sufficient for bringing extra cargo on a ride. It has a claimed weight capacity of 100 pounds. It's large enough to easily attach a bag or a milk crate to the back. Plus, Heybike offers accessories like a rear basket for this bike. The other aspect of the bike that I enjoyed is the placement of the battery on this unit. It's pleasantly located behind the seat, which makes removal and installation very easy. The seat actually flips up to make this process fast and simple. Plus, there's no ducking under the bike to place the key into a hidden keyhole like on other folding bikes. The keyhole for this unit is clearly displayed on the side of the battery for easy access. And now we got to get to the cons. And our first con for this bike were those loud mechanical brakes. Now the mechanical brakes that come with this unit are not a high-priced item, and they really displayed this during testing. Right off the bat, it was clear that they were loud, but they were also rubbing against the calipers. And after I'd improved this by correcting that rub on the calipers, the loudness really didn't go away. In fact, it got worse as the pads and rotors wore in, and there was a lot of rotor and pad noise as you stopped, squealing and squeaking. I find loud squealing brakes are a downside to cheaper brake setups like the Philel mechanical brakes that are on this unit. The bike also features 160mm rotors front and back, which are not going to be able to dissipate heat as effectively as a 180mm rotor that we normally see on e-bikes. This is going to impact the bike's ability to make repetitive stops effectively as those brakes and brake pads heat up. The brakes were a reasonable performer though during testing, despite the loudness of the action, coming in with a fairly standard distance of 19.5 feet to come to a full stop from 20 miles per hour, which places them right in the middle of most of the bikes that we test. Our second con for the bike was an underpowered 500 watt motor. Now, the 500 watt nominal output motor on the Mars is a fairly standard item that we see on a lot of these bikes. So I assumed it would have a similar performance during our 0 to 20 tests and hill climbs. Now, I was interested to see that it felt considerably less capable than other motors when it was facing inclines and hills. The bike is also slower to accelerate and seems to provide less assistance on steep grades than most 500 watt motors that we've used. Its 0 to 20 time was anywhere from 3 to 6 seconds slower than other bikes to reach 20 miles per hour. And that was taking into account similar wattage competitors. And this resulted in hill climbs that were slower than those of the other bikes. Now, it wasn't the worst of the bunch or that we've tested, but it was slow enough that it became clear that high torque acceleration and hill climbing were not the Mars e-bike's strengths. So if you have lots of steep hills on your ride, or you want to be able to take off from the line with lots of acceleration, this isn't going to be the bike for you. And finally, the third con for the bike is the suspension seat post that comes with it. Now, the suspension seat post is definitely better than a solid seat post with no rear suspension. But honestly, the slight amount of suspension that this seat post offered was really less than satisfactory. I found that it really offered little comfort except for on the slightest bumps. And one of the reasons behind this was as soon as you sat down on the seat, it felt like most of the travel was being used up just from your weight. During bumps and hits to the rear, it was really easy to use what little travel remained. I've had slightly better experiences on other suspension seat posts that seem to be a little firmer and sit higher when you were sitting on them, but still, I would prefer a bike with a true suspension component located in the rear linkage, as opposed to this kind of suspension seat post, especially one that seems to be as inexpensive as this one. So what does the Heybike Mars do best? Well, as with most other folders, the key feature of this bike that really stands out is its ability to fold up, which it does just about as well as any folder, with a few nice secondary perks. None of the folding e-bikes of this size and shape seem to be smaller than the other when they're folded, which makes for a pretty equal playing field. But the result is still more than enough saved space in your garage to make it easier to store them and to make transport in a vehicle easier. Another notable feature of the bike I enjoyed was its externally mounted battery, which when combined with the flip-up seat made battery removal and installation very easy. I also really appreciated the fact that I didn't need to stoop under the bike to reach the key. Its placement was logical and easy to locate. And finally, I really liked the way that this battery operated with its long, consistent taper. It's the type of bike that really works hard to not leave you stranded. And personally, I prefer e-bike controllers that feature this kind of power-reducing programming rather than others that seem to offer full power until they reach a certain voltage and just shut off. The Mars was going to reduce wattage all the way down to nothing before it shut down the battery, ensuring that you could still limp home with a little bit of assistance when you overextended that battery on a ride. So what are some reasons to look elsewhere? Well, the Heybike Mars is a folding e-bike that has some nice features that make it functional and pleasant to use. But riders who don't need a folding e-bike will probably be able to find better performance and features on other platforms. The folding feature also reduces the bike's ability to corner comfortably, despite that increased head tube angle. I find that cornering and high-speed comfort are both qualities that most folding e-bikes seem to lack. So if you're really out for performance in cornering, descents, and general riding, folders are probably not your best bet. The Mars is also slightly more expensive than other folding bikes in the category, coming in about $300 to $400 more than some of the other brands at the time of recording of this video. So users should explore all options before they make a decision to make sure that this is going to be your best fit for budget and features. Now let's move into the frame and geometry. And the frame of the Mars e-bike is very similar to other folders, but it also features a reduced top tube size, and this is due to the absence of a battery hidden inside. The battery is instead externally mounted in the rear triangle of the bike. And the bike also appears to have a slightly slacker head tube angle, which improved the bike's cornering ability a little bit. I still felt drawn over the bike on turns and descents, but it was improved over other folding e-bikes that I've ridden. Now the Heybike Mars features a 70mm front fork with no rear suspension. Instead, it relies on a suspension seat post to assist with any impacts to the rear, and it doesn't do a great job. The rear rack on the unit can carry 100 pounds, and it's removable as it's mounted to gussets with bolts. The bike also has an extendable front handlebar, which was a nice feature because it allowed for vertical adjustment to achieve the right riding position. Taking a look at the measurements on this bike, we have a reach measurement of 19 inches, a stack measurement of 28 inches, standover height of 26 inches, a virtual top tube length of 23 inches, a minimum saddle height of 33 inches, and a max saddle height of 37.5 inches, with a wheelbase of 45 inches. And these measurements bring us a recommended rider height of 5 feet 3 inches to 6 feet 3 inches. Next, taking a look at the motor. The Mars uses a Heybike branded 500 watt nominal output motor. It's a rear hub motor that's capable of 750 watts at peak output with 50 Newton meters of torque. The motor was a fine asset for general riding, but I noticed that its controller has a slower than average acceleration. The bike is far from a torque monster. During our acceleration test, we managed to go from 0 to 20 in a total of 15 seconds using only the throttle, and 11 seconds using that pedal assist. This also impacted the hill climb tests, with the bike having less torque for climbing than other recent models that I've tested. While the motor was not the slowest that we've seen on hill climbs, it felt noticeably less powerful, which resulted in increased effort from the rider to maintain speed and climb hills. And this resulted in a hill climb time for our small hill climb of 3 minutes and 6 seconds, and a hill climb time in our medium hill test of 2 minutes and 39 seconds, placing it a little bit slower than the average that we have for most bikes. As we move into the cockpit and control, we find that the Mars is fairly comfortable. It features a 600mm set of handlebars with a slight riser as well, so you can make a height adjustment for dialing in a good riding position on this bike. Now the bike is controlled by a black and white LCD display, which has integrated controls on it. It uses a 3-button control pad that's mounted on that display, as well as an additional light and horn button, which are on a separate 2-button control pad beside. The display features a range of options, including trip and lifetime odometer, speed, real-time watt meter, and multiple options menus. These allow you to customize your bike and change some of its attributes, including the wheel size, number of assist levels, and the voltage level of the battery meter, so you can change when it displays those bars and at what voltage they'll disappear. The control pad uses the standard button layout, with the up and down arrows for controlling the assist level and also for scrolling the menu. The bike comes with 3 assist levels standard, which did offer a good range of assistance. Holding the up button will activate the light, or just use the dedicated light button on that second control pad, making it easy. Holding the down arrow is going to turn on the walk mode, pushing the bike at a slow speed of about 2 to 3 miles per hour. The bike also has a thumb style throttle, which is located on the right side underneath that TX50 overhand shifter. Looking at the battery, the Mars uses a 48 volt, 12.5 amp hour battery pack for power. And the battery is externally mounted below the seat, with the seat flipping up to allow the battery to slide on and off easily. The battery also features a USB slot for charging devices on the go, whether it's mounted to the bike or removed from it. During use, I was impressed with the range provided by the battery, which is undoubtedly a result of the less impressive motor acceleration that we're finding. A less torque-heavy output from the motor seems to result in extended ranges and reduced battery consumption. The controller also does a good job of slowly tapering the motor output as battery voltages decrease to extend your range. You're going to notice a considerable decline in motor output as the battery declines, which affects assist and top speed, but it also extends your range and it keeps you from getting stranded. During our range test, we managed to go 29.93 miles with 1,132 feet of elevation gain over 1 hour 47 minutes at an average speed of 16.7 miles per hour. Moving on to the charger, battery removal, and keys. The bike is charged using a 54.6 volt 2 amp output charger, which will fully replenish the battery in about 6 hours. Now the charger plugs into a charge port which is located on the upper portion of the battery opposite the keyhole. It's a very pleasant location for the port, since it's easy to see and easy to access. And the battery is charged from this same port whether it's installed or removed from the bike. To improve water resistance, the port is protected by a swivel-style plastic cover. Now, I've found that these covers are pretty easy to break off by accident. Ask me how I know, so be careful when you're using them. They also don't offer the same level of water protection that a rubber plug does, so ensure that it's closed when you're riding in wet conditions. Now the battery is simple to remove from the bike due to the flip-up seat with that easy-to-use lever. It's located underneath the rear of the saddle for you to click and push the saddle up. Just push the lever and the seat flips up and forward, allowing the battery to be easily removed. Next, you need to unlock the battery with the key and then tug upwards using the attached handle to remove it fully. Installation back on the bike is also easy. Just be sure to line up the battery with the mounting rails and let it slide down them to lock into place. Next, moving on to the drivetrain. We see a pretty typical drivetrain setup on the Mars, with a Shimano Tourney TX50 shifter and 7-speed 14 to 28 tooth rear freewheel. This allows the bike to have a standard gearing range, which is capable of pushing the bike up to its 20 mph speed limit. At speeds over 20 mph, you are going to experience ghost pedaling. Since this bike is limited to the Class 2 speed limit, however, it's not really a noticeable concern, except when you happen to be traveling downhill exceeding that 20 mph. Now, the front chainring has a double-sided aluminum guard to keep the chain free from your clothing. So it's a very budget-inspired drivetrain, which is offering a standard level of performance with no real added value or significant downsides. So it's just fine. And taking a look at the brakes, we have a little bit of disappointment compared to other higher priced options. Now, they've chosen to use a set of Philel mechanical levers and calipers with 160mm rotors. Although this is not a high-speed bike, the presence of 180mm rotors would definitely increase its ability to shed heat during repeated braking and improve the brake's performance overall. Despite the fact that we have a fairly typical stopping distance of 19.5 feet, I still disliked the Philel brakes. This was primarily due to the amount of adjustment that was required to ensure that they weren't rubbing the calipers, as well as the noise that they generated while stopping. The squealing noise that they produced while stopping was disconcerting and very loud, especially when you were stopping repeatedly. In total, we managed to stop with a braking distance of 19.5 feet from 20 mph. The Heybike Mars uses a set of Chaoyang 20-inch by 4-inch tires, which have a mountain-style tread pattern, which is going to be suitable for a variety of surfaces. They also feature 3mm hippo skin puncture protection to keep you rolling without annoying tube punctures. I found them to have good traction on a variety of surfaces that I typically test on, including dirt, gravel, sand, and pavement. And they're going to allow you to adjust the air pressure for enhanced traction and comfort based on your chosen riding terrain. I find these tires are very similar to other fat tires that we see on bikes like this, such as the CST BFT, and they offer similar performance and similar quality with no issues present during our test rides. The Mars also features hard plastic fenders on the front and rear as a stock item on the bike, which offers full coverage for road debris and water splashes, making your ride more comfortable. These fenders could bump around a bit on the bike, but they were fairly easy to set up and keep secure. When it comes to safety, the Mars has an LED front headlight, which is integrated into the bike's electronics, and it's controlled with a dedicated light button on the small 2-button keypad. It also features an integrated tail light, which includes a braking indicator. This is a nice feature for commuter bikes, and it increases rider safety in low light conditions and while you're braking. The bike also has standard brake inhibitors to cut motor power when braking and ensure that you're coming to a fast stop. The Mars features a standard single-sided kickstand, which didn't present any issues during our test rides. Next, moving on to the contact points, and starting with the grips. The grips on the Mars e-bike are ergonomic lock-on faux leather grips. Now, I'm not normally a fan of this style of grip because I personally find the faux leather to be a very slippery surface underhand. But I did appreciate that these are lock-on grips and not slip-on style, which means that they're not going to be able to slide around on the bars. That helped to maintain a firm feeling underhand despite the slight slipperiness that faux leather seems to have inherently. So it wasn't all bad about these grips, being better than those slip-on grips of the same style. When we take a look at the saddle, we find that it's a plush and wider option than some of the more reduced sport style options, which really resulted in a pleasant seat. The saddle didn't have any impact on pedaling or become uncomfortable over the longer distance tests, which was a definite plus for the bike. Now the saddle has a slight suspension travel to it, which I found wasn't much help on this suspension seat post. It seemed like sitting on the saddle moved through about half of the available travel, making it really easy to bottom out the seat post over any kind of bump, which resulted in a very jarring impact. So while the suspension seat post is better than nothing, it didn't provide much in terms of increased comfort. Getting to the pedals, we have a typical set of folding plastic platform pedals on the bike that we see on many of the folders we've tested. They're a nice option for the folding ability, which removes a few inches from either side of the bike in its folded state. I found them to be a bit slippery underfoot though, with only the small integrated plastic pegs for grip. You're not the only one who feels that this review is a bit of deja vu. After riding several folding e-bikes, I can tell you that they feel pretty similar in general. But the Mars folding e-bike stood out in a few respects, both for the better and for the worse. It had features that made it more pleasant and easy to ride, such as key and battery placement. Its geometry is slightly improved, and a rear rack and fenders are included in the bike as standard items. Some other items though, such as the loud brakes, firm suspension seat post, and an uninspiring motor performance, didn't stand out from the crowd. So it's gonna come down to which bike best fits your needs and price point as to which one of these folding e-bikes is gonna be your pick. Is this bike for you? Check out the detailed specs at bikeride.com and see user and expert reviews. You can also check out other great e-bikes and see them rated to find your perfect match. Do you have a question or something you want to say? Let me know in the comments, and we're going to start getting you some answers. And if you liked this video, please give me a like and subscribe so we can keep on bringing you the latest e-bike reviews and news. I'm Scott with bikeride.com. I want to say thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy the ride.